Our first session today, now I need my glasses, is going to be moderated by Dan Ludwig. Dan has nearly 20 years of experience at Breakbush Brothers, managing the company's self-funded health plans since 2014. Dan developed the Centers of Excellence program for Breakbush, which utilizes steerage and an international pharmacy vendor. Thanks to Dan's leadership, each year since becoming self-funded, Breakbush has maintained annual per-member costs lower than the first year they began. That is phenomenal. In recognition of their outstanding work, Dan and Breakbush Brothers received the Employer Leadership Award from the National Alliance of Healthcare Purchasing Coalitions in 2019. Dan is also currently serving as the Vice President of the Alliance Board. Thanks for your help with this session, Dan, and now I'll turn it over to you to introduce your panel.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hello, everyone. As Cheryl mentioned, I'm Dan Ludwig, Director of Benefits and Safety at Breakbush Brothers. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome back two distinguished guests. We've got Tracy Rothenberger and Mike Tomzig. Now, Tracy is a trailblazer in healthcare transformation with a career spanning 3 decades. As the clinic manager of Nordic Private Care, she spearheaded efforts to increase healthcare accessibility and affordability by establishing a successful on-site clinic. Tracy's visionary leadership and dedication have had profound impact with her community, and she was honored with a Healthcare Transformation Award from the Alliance in 2020. Now, Mike is not only an employer member with the Alliance, but also a member of the Alliance Board of Directors. Mike has been with Colby Windows and Doors since 1992. He oversees all financial functions and fleet operations for the organization. Mike was also actively engaged with the North Central Employers Healthcare Alliance, or NEHA, for 25 years, serving as its president for almost a decade. Throughout his career, Mike has been instrumental in driving healthcare innovation in North Central Wisconsin. In 2022, the Alliance recognized his contributions with a Lifetime Achievement Award for his many years of leading positive healthcare change in North Central Wisconsin. Welcome to both of you. So, Tracy, we're going to start with you. So, can you share your journey of how you developed and implemented the on-site clinic at Nordic Private Care that led you to receiving this Healthcare Transformation Award?
Sure. My journey is a little bit different than a lot of people who started the on-site clinics. I actually started in an occupational health background. I would actually be the one going out to the employers and doing the drug screens and the audiograms and the health risk assessments, and in that process I actually was listening to what employers were always saying, and they always wanted to be able to cut their health care costs. So as years went by, then becoming a director of the occupational health program, it was still, that need. How do we cut health care costs? So I formed with another person to actually go and start an on-site clinic and get that one up and running. And it's finding the providers and that can do the things that you need them to do. It's offering those services to help cut costs. Being that I had an occupational health background, my main focus at first was in worker comp. Worker comp costs, how do you bring those down first? Is sprains, strains, that type of thing. Look for your providers that could do that. From then, I just moved on into finding medical providers, finding ways to cut costs with not only radiology services, but also, in blood work, where's your best lab? How do you, find an MRI? How do you find a CT scan? And where you can collaborate with those people?
And Mike, you've got a little bit different story. Beyond the great work that you do at Colby Windows and Doors, can you talk a little bit about NEHA, the work you did there, and what led that organization to begin working more closely with the Alliance?
Sure, Dan. Well, about 30 years ago when I moved to Wausau, I always say I was 14 at the time, I got contacted by another CFO colleague, and he was meeting with a group of other CFOs that were really concerned about this alarming trend in healthcare trajectory costs and how we're all going to be broke if we don't do something about it. And so after some research and discussions and all that, about 10 companies started NEHA in 1997. And some of the tenets that we wanted to abide by on day one was that we needed to own the contracts. We weren't going to use somebody else's network. So we had to go and establish our own contracts and had a contracting management firm do all that. And we also said we needed to own the data. We need to collect the data, we need to analyze it, we need to report it so we can have actionable results. So with those two tenets, we're off and running. And some of the innovations that we've had over the 30 years included when we started contracting, it was fairly new then to ask for fee schedules. Didn't want to lock ourselves in just a % off discounts and then be faced with the rising costs anyhow. Our contracts usually included work comp whenever we could. So again, if anybody had a self-funded work comp program, you could get those same great medical rates for the work comp. We also believed in having a lot of choice. So again, employers could have their own plan design, and our job was to offer various networks. So we had a broad network, which would be very similar to the comprehensive network that the Alliance offers today. But we also introduced in 2006 the concept of narrow networks. Again, promising steerage to the providers, and Central Wisconsin's kind of a two major provider system town. So by promising that they get some steerage, which they already had anyhow, we got deeper discounts and again could pass those savings along. So we're pretty proud about that. We also made sure that we did periodic audits of TPAs to make sure that plan provisions were complied with, not only on the pricing but the adjudication. Some people thought that was really very valuable because, as plan administrators, you have a fiduciary duty to make sure that the assets aren't being wasted. So that was good. In 2013, we did an RFP for a preferred on-site clinic provider, and the concept of DPCs wasn't around by that time. All the independents were herded up into the major provider systems, so we did have to deal with ministry health care. But we had an interesting twist on that because there's a lot of employers that they're not big enough to have on-site care. So we had a deal with ministry that we could use their primary care clinics as a near site. So that some of the smaller employers, plus even the people who did have the on-site care, they could go to a ministry clinic and get primary care, lab, and x-rays at about Medicare prices. So obviously that was very popular. As the PBM world got murkier, we realized that we needed a consultant to help us to negotiate good contracts, to audit the contracts and the pricings, and actually understand that the deal that they promised was the deal that was delivered. So that was pretty good on that too. And toward the end, we did a lot of provider profiling because we had those narrow networks, and the bulk of the care in those networks were provided by the major provider system. We could take the claims data, run it through an episode of care scenario, so then you could compare what an episode of care for, say, like a knee replacement was at our three major systems that we were using. And boy, that sure opened up some eyes when you put them on a chart and you got the lowest cost provider in green and the highest cost in red, and you see a lot of red in one column. You can imagine how that helps you for contract negotiations. So very blessed for being able to spend time with a lot of people in central Wisconsin that had that same vision that we needed to change the healthcare in that area. So,
And Mike, for those in the audience, you can see how his work with NEHA has really aligns with what the Alliance does, so we're very happy for the partnership that we've been able to form. And now that we've heard a little bit about where you two have been, we want to talk about where you're going and what you two see on the horizon. So Mike, we'll stick with you. What are some of the most significant shifts or trends that you've observed over the years, and how have they influenced your approach to driving change within the organization?
Well, there's been a lot of years, so it could be a long story. Number one, the consolidation in the industry. I mean, when we formed NEHA in '97, there were still independent providers in the central Wisconsin area. And just like we've seen statewide and nationwide, the consolidation in the industry is just tremendous. And what that means is that those provider systems get bigger, And quite frankly, folks, we're being beaten up as employers. So that's why it's so very important that the NEHA and the Alliance really kind of united our efforts, because we need to have a stronger voice for the employers. Remember, we are the ones paying most of the bill. And half the time you don't get surveys, right? You do as patients. And of course, those people don't have as much invested in it. So it's really important that we have that strong voice. So for the marketing committee, in case we have some guests here that aren't Alliance members, we certainly invite you to join, because we need to have that united group. Break away from the BUCAs and come and join the Alliance and be with employers. So, but then as we have consolidation, I also talk about now we got deconsolidation of the industry. All those practitioners that thought that the major provider systems were going to be a great lifestyle and didn't have to worry about paperwork and all that, are now drowning under that, and now they're breaking away. So it's nice to see. It's kind of like bell bottoms, right? They were the rage in the 80s, and they kind of went away, and now they're back. So it's great to see, because that offers a lot of contracting opportunities. These people that break away and start their own independent practices don't have all that overhead that a major integrated system would have, and so that provides great opportunity to save costs. So that's been a really good, a heck of a trend. And then obviously I think another trend that we see is just the whole murky world of PBMs. It's just really tough to navigate that, and with specialty drugs being an ever increasing and going to be projected to be a huge cost of your health spend, you've got to be looking at how do you control specialty drug costs, whether it be a carve out or special programs or something. You got to do something to get ahead of that game.
And I want to go back to what you said about uniting as a group of employers. That's something that I recognized early on in our journey at Breakbush, is that we can go and talk with a provider or a system, but we're one employer and one voice. And I felt that it was our job to get involved with the Alliance and also try to educate other employers to make sure that we're in this together and trying to fight as a united group, as opposed to a group of individual employers all trying to get something independently. We're going to be a lot stronger together. So Tracy, what factors were most critical in the success of the initiatives aimed at making healthcare more accessible and affordable for you?
I think one of the biggest things is you have to have the employer buy-in, and the employer has to stand behind it, and they have to be dedicated to it. I mean, that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure before I started these clinics, is that I did have that employer backing, that they were going to be there to support it. It's going to have rough moments, it's going to have high moments, it's going to have, in-between moments. And then it's, once you have their commitment to it, then you got to have the employees or your patients, our patients, trust too. When we started the clinic at Flambeau, so I've been with Nordic, Cheryl and I just figured out, I've been with the Nordic group of companies now almost 20 years. That's hard to believe.
Since you were 14.
Yeah, no. So that was kind of like an eye-opener for me, but in all of this, it was building the trust. And I mean, I walked the plant floors. I talked to people. I listened to them as well. And it's interesting, because when their first question is that, well, how long is it going to last? And it's like, finally our CEO just came out and actually in an employee meeting said the clinics are here and the clinics are here to stay. So it's really building that trust, and then from there, you just start finding what works for them, okay? What are their needs? And not everybody's needs are the same. So, okay, if it's musculoskeletal, and that's what a lot of the worker comp stuff was, we brought in chiropractic. You bring in chiropractic, they can not only just, do like adjustments, but they can do deep heat ultrasound, they can do lasering, they can do stretching, they can work with all those employees. And then it's like increasing, it's baby steps. What do we do? One thing at a time. You bring in the medications, you bring in the actual physician. You are there when they need it. So we actually opened our clinics to be open from like 5 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. So we were there for all of the people. If first shift got to come over and see the physician, then we had to make sure that third shift got to come over. You didn't want to single people out because that's what's going to build that trust as well. Then you find providers who are able actually to connect with the people. They understand the occupational world, they understand manufacturing, and they're willing to give their time to not only to those people, but to those, employees' families. So we built that like that, and then you bring in whatever other things that they may need. One of the other things is that no matter, we have 5 different locations now. We have one in Wisconsin, we have 2 in Ohio, 1 in Indiana, and 1 in Georgia. And all of those locations are all different, and those people are all different. So what could be good in Baraboo may not be what's good in Georgia. So, Georgia has a lot of diabetics and things like that. So our first thing there was a medical provider. It's just those little things of listening to what not only the people want, but what's actually going to help the employer as well.
Thank you for that. In Breakbush, our journey was fairly similar. We started out small. We started out with PT, trying to get the musculoskeletal, and primarily aimed at the occupational setting. And it took a number of years of success in that, and it's about building that trust and getting the employees to understand that this is really a benefit for them, which helped us then to launch an actual standalone clinic that we then brought in primary care and expanded our physical therapy and expanded several other services. Just like what you say, you start out small and you build your way up.
Yeah, and there was actually one point in time where, the trust was built so well that there was one of the associates or employees that was actually taking his mom into town to do some shopping. And on the way into town, he just didn't feel good. They had to pull over. He waited a little bit and continued on. He went right by a hospital and came to our clinic, where he came in the door, sat in the chair, and within 5 minutes, he went out. He went out on us. We had to call the ambulance. The guy went into cardiac arrest, and we saved him. And but to go past the hospital to come to our clinic, I mean, that's the trust that he had in our provider at that time. So.
Yeah, and having an on-site service is that you start to hear some stories like that are really moving on what you can do. And I know that a lot of your care at the clinic is free. How do employers justify giving away free health care?
At the clinic, what you do is your costs are, I don't want to say they're so low, but they're probably a quarter of the price that it would take to go out to an outside provider. So you actually direct hire. I direct hire my providers. I don't go through a third-party administrator. I found I started that way. I learned that lesson, so I shouldn't say I don't do that, but I did do that, been there, done that, and it didn't. It was not cost effective. So I found providers that were willing to, and a lot of them were retired, because they didn't want to go into the big system. They didn't like the big systems. They didn't like not being able to spend time with their patients. So you bring those in, and you, I just lost my string. You bring those providers in and to provide the care, to spend the time with the associates, and that's how. You want to help me out here?
So they were employees?
They were direct employees.
Really?
Yeah.
Your finance guy didn't yell about liability?
No, well, nope. Because when I direct, do the people, they understand why they're there. So they're not out for, millions of dollars. They're there to help people. And the direct, contracting, whether it's direct contracting with, Quest myself to do, rather than write an order or send them out to, a lab or something like that, you can keep those costs down. And it saves, thousands of dollars. So an x-ray that is like $400 at a hospital, I can contract for like $92, and that includes the radiology fee. And that they come on site. So you can do on-site radiology for x-rays, we have echocardiograms, we have ultrasounds that they can do. You just pick and cut those costs that way.
So you mentioned that the providers like working for that, and I've got a similar experience that our providers want to be out of the system. Can you tell us from a provider standpoint, what's their experience compared to traditional medicine?
They get to spend time with their patients. They get to know their patients. And, they build that relationship. They build the trust. For somebody being able to go past a hospital to come to our clinic, there's that trust there. And that's exactly what they like to do. It's the Marcus Welby. I don't know if any of you are still that age, but it's the Marcus Welby MD, care that is needed. It's not about, okay, you come in, okay, now you have a thyroid problem, let's send you to endocrinology. You have a cardiac problem, let's send you to a cardiologist. Maybe at some point you have to do that, but your providers and the providers that I look for should know how to handle those situations. So if they need an echo or if they need, a stress test, by all means, send them out, but it's keeping them in the clinic, having them and providing the services to keep them out of the systems. You want to keep them out of the systems.
You mentioned that there's a lot that a provider can do, but traditionally there aren't. For many of us that are my age or older, you remember that as a child you'd need stitches and you went to your primary care provider and they stitched you up. That's unheard of these days. Now you go straight to the ER. Nobody goes to their primary care, but obviously primary care has variability to do stitches, but it's not done.
Yeah, if you would call up to the clinic and say, hey, I cut myself, can I get an appointment? They'd say, nope, go to, ER. The urgent cares today, too, are just declining as well. I mean, it's hard. Even in Baraboo, we used to have urgent care. Now we have to either go to the Dells, the Portage, or Reedsburg. So, it's instead of making access to health care more accessible, they're actually making it accessible.
And not to mention the cost.
And
Mike, what's a ER visit for stitches cost?
Too much. Because it is an ER, so you're guaranteed it's going to be $1,000 visit. And we had an on-site provider that we had to replace because, again, it was part of a major system through some acquisitions, and they started doing less and less. And again, you got somebody who cuts their hand in the plant, and it's not bad stitches, and they go, oh, we don't do that anymore. Like, you used to. You unilaterally abdicated on me, and that's healthcare, unfortunately.
Yep, very true. Mike, again, being a finance guy, what suggestions do you have for balancing the cost while maintaining high quality of care within the self-funded model, and what strategies have you found to be most effective?
Well, I think first of all, you got to sit down with your broker or consultant and what's a vision, and understand you're not going to get the vision done overnight. As Tracy said, you start small. Start with something. If you do nothing, nothing does happen, So you can get started using that broker and consultant, try to lay out a plan. And so once you get your foot in the door, kind of have in the back of your mind what the next step might be to be able to scale. So again, if you do pick up a partner provider, a DPC or something, make sure that they can grow with you. That, again, the access won't be the issue. The services that they can provide would be really key. And like I said, take it a step at a time, because nobody understands this until you get into it. And there ain't a playbook a lot of times on this stuff. You go with your gut, you go with the data. Where you said if MSK is the issue, well, you need to focus on that. If it's cancer, well, then that's a little tougher. But if it's heart attack and stroke, again, lifestyle changes and things like that you can plug in so that you can start achieving some goals. And the good news is that, most of these independent providers, they will work with you to scale up. That's the beauty of that is, again, you kind of share that vision with them so they know and they can be planning accordingly. Another thing you can do, and what we tried to do this year at my employer, Colby, is we went to a full four-tier plan. So the Alliance has identified providers that they think are cost-effective and have a list of that. And so we took the list of those people and pared it down a little bit for North Central Wisconsin, and that's called our Tier 1, and there's really no copay. If you got somebody who's in a traditional PPO health plan, they go there for free, just like it would be at the clinic. And if you're in a high deductible plan, you at least got to establish or meet a deductible, but it's free. And you're trying to go through that and say, by the way, did I tell you that was free? Tier 1, remember, free. Did I say Tier 1 was free? And then we've also tiered that by using the Alliance's Premier Network. Again, North Central Wisconsin, the Marshfield Clinic Health Systems there, and there's quite a bit of referrals that go to UW. So again, we could plug that in and say, if you go to those systems, I can offer you a better benefit, a lower copay for doing that. And then we use the Alliance Broad Network, and then obviously Tier 4 would be an out-of-network. So we couple all that along with a clinic that offers primary care, lab, x-rays, PT, OT, wellness, all for free. So the new clinic provider that we have has enthusiastically taken the challenge when I said you got to get people engaged. Be interesting when we see our first quarter reports, but they're already saying that the utilization is great and that our people are great. I think they're so used to, going in and it was the quick 20-minute exam and shuffle you out the door, that you find that these DPCs, they spend the time with the people. They make them feel like it matters. So I would certainly recommend that if you're an Alliance member to investigate how you can tier the benefits. So again, you can kind of get the steerage and reward the people for using the cost-effective providers that they've identified.
Yeah, that's one of the things we did too, is we actually designed our plan to kind of help with what some of our clinic was doing. So if we were offering MRIs for nothing, the Alliance has, contracted with, a imaging place, and we can send our employees there, and when they go there, if they go there, it's no cost. Absolutely none. It doesn't hit their deductible. It doesn't hit their out-of-pocket. They get to go. It may be 20, 25 minutes away, but if it's not going to cost them anything, they'll do it. If they need a knee surgery or a knee replacement, and it's a bundled thing, and we can get them to where we can get that bundled cost, and it's going to keep money in their pocket and be free, they're going to take it. It is. It's about plan design, getting people connected and educating them as to how that, all your programs all kind of go together.
And for those out there that go, well, that sounds, I'm a small company, can I afford free? Well, like I've said, hey, an MRI is probably going to be $4,000 to $5,000. You're going to have to pay 20%. I, as the employer, are going to have to pay 80% of that. So instead of that $3,200, that's my share, I'll pay 100% of an MRI. That's $695. I'll do that all day. Mm-hmm. So again, you got to understand the concept. And again, it can sound daunting when we say free, but when you work through the math, it's actually saving you money.
Saving lots of money. And he's right. You don't have to have a lot of employees. I mean, when we started the one in Sharon Center, Ohio, there was just a little over 100 employees there. But we mirror our clinics. So if we have a physician, that has a physician. If we have a chiropractor, they have a chiropractor. If we have a wellness coach, we have that counseling there for them, mental health, everything. It's mirrored, but just in smaller portions. And, it just gets littler. But you don't have to have 500-600 employees. You can have a small scaled set.
I want to talk more about the Tier 1. I want to find out from both of you what services are currently in your Tier 1. We'll start with you, Mike.
Well, a lot of MSK, and in central Wisconsin, again, being it's kind of a locked-up market, we send people out. And again, by using the clinic, we can do the pre-ops, and they go away for the surgery, and they come back, and all the therapy can be done, at our clinics. So there's a lot of MSK procedures, CT, radiology, MRIs, infusion services, colonoscopies. An interesting one that for the hunters up north, trigger finger. I guess you can do some kind of surgery for that. Our HR gal really got excited about that because my husband needs that all the time. But a lot of it's centered around MSK.
Okay.
Yep. Pretty much the same thing. I know that we were just about ready to finalize our plan, and then I had to quick call Melina and say, "Hey, can we do this?" And so we actually got a few things in Tier 1 that are at no cost. So it's imaging. We put in Cologuard and colonoscopies. I'm just going to go off kilter here a little bit. But talking about colonoscopies and contracting, and getting those as a Tier 1. So if we do a Cologuard in our clinic and somebody comes back with like a positive Cologuard, we can then send them to a facility for a colonoscopy. But I can guarantee that if we wouldn't have been offering that Cologuard, they would have never gone for that colonoscopy. But going for that colonoscopy, in our plan, we've got it so if you're in that colonoscopy and they find polyps, you take them out and it's still no cost to you. I mean, that's covered. And we've had quite a few of those, and it's covered under, the screening still. So 100% for that. But if they find that cancer, which we've found 2 this year already. So, but they didn't want to do a colonoscopy. So we offered them Cologuard, and they took the Cologuard, and now they did their colonoscopy, and they're good. So. Yeah,
and I agree that's important. And it's also important to make sure that you come with a provider that's going to give you that one cost, whether or not they find something in there and got to snip a polyp. And because that was something that we saw at Breakbush. People would go in thinking that their colonoscopy was going to be free because it was covered as a screening colonoscopy, but then they snipped off a polyp and it switched, and it's no longer screening because they did something. And they would be upset that they came out of there with a bill. So we recognize that we got to do something different and tell them, hey, no matter what, we want a contract that covers all. If you've got to snip something and send something in for lab work, we want a bundled fee associated with that.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to get more engagement than that way too, because, like I said, it's keeping money in their pocket. It's saving the employer's money, but it's also keeping money in those employees' pockets. It's making those employees be able to go home at the end of the day and not just want to sit on a couch. It's keeping them active with their families and things like that.
Yeah, and that's key. One thing that we found is people said, well, I don't want to do a colonoscopy because I'm worried if they find something, it's going to cost me money, which to me just didn't make sense. It's
right.
They found something. They took care of it. That was important that they do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jump back a little bit with the tiered design and go over the concept of people believe that your plan is designed to steer people to the correct care through deductibles and co-insurance and whatnot. But what's important is to actually run the numbers yourself and say, does my plan steer appropriately given the procedures? And some of it may, if you have a traditional plan design, it may steer you from one MRI to another because there is going to be cost savings. But when it comes to more expensive things like joint replacements, chances are they're going to hit their max out of pocket, whether they go to a cost-effective place or one that's going to charge them $60,000 for that joint replacement. So you really need to run the numbers on your plan design and see, is it truly steering the way that you want it to steer on some of these more expensive ones? And then that's a good chance to sit there and consider, okay, do we need to go to a plan that is truly going to steer regardless of how big of a procedure it is, because we know, okay, if they do this, they're not going to hit their max out of pocket, so it's going to keep their dollars in play and all that, which is important.
Which is important. And again, why do people have to tap into their retirement accounts? It's usually medical bills. And there's a lot of angst out there amongst your employees about medical bills. So again, if you can help alleviate that, you got a happier employee too.
I agree. There's a lot of angst out there in regards to what will this cost me? Is this blood draw going to cost me? I need to get an A1C, or I need to get my thyroid checked every so often. What's it going to cost me? And when I hear those stories, I always say, hey, go to our clinic. We know what the cost is going to be. You go out into the system, you don't know what that cost is going to be.
Right.
So, Mike, looking ahead, what do you see as the most pressing challenges and opportunities for self-funded healthcare in the coming years? And what should organizations be doing now to be prepared to meet the challenges and take advantages of those opportunities?
Well, I think if you're like most of the employers I talk to, we've all got aging workforces, unfortunately. We're just not bringing enough new talent in to a lot of different industries, especially manufacturing. So, you got to face it. Your MSK and all that, as your workforce ages, it's going to cost you more. So if you don't get ahead of that ball game and realize that and start doing something, your costs are just going to explode. Everybody's got good intentions, but again, as you get older, just stuff happens. So try to get ahead and start doing something, because if you don't, and if you have an aging workforce, you got kind of a double whammy. That's for sure. And then the other piece is, again, try to instill a sense of wellness in these people. And again, when you got an on-site clinic, it's nice because, again, they're spending the time with people. They spend time talk about your overall health and wellness, and you get confidence in them. I think Tracy had talked about that. It's kind of amazing. When we got our new clinic provider, I went in, had my annual, got it done right away. And I said, I don't know if I got seasonal disorder. I just kind of feel a little down, because this was January. And the provider looks at me and says, I'm going to draw another thing of blood. I got a couple of ideas. And sure as heck, they found out I was iron deficient and vitamin D. But if you would have been at a regular doc on a primary care visit, you would have been out of time. You wouldn't have even brought that up because, oh my God, they're going to now code that as a detective. And I just thought, these guys care, So again, so now do I feel more motivated to take care of myself when that guy shows me some care and concern? Absolutely. So, you really got to instill that sense of wellness, and it's good not only for you as the employer for your share, but all of us are struggling to find workers, aren't we? So you got to take care of the people that you have. So, I always talk about that in our company meetings, is that go get this screening, go get this stuff done. I don't want you to be a ticking time bomb, because then it just costs them and the company a lot more money.
Yeah. One of the things is that, everybody wants to do these health risk assessments. What happens to those results? They get sent to an employee? They get sent to a family member? Does anybody ever review that with them? No, I think that's one of the things that the on-site clinics do, is when they come in and they get their annual blood work, then they're scheduled. They're rescheduled right away, right then. It's not going to cost them an extra dime to come in and go over those results. I mean, before you get it and they get the results, and if they have high cholesterol or something else is going on with them, it doesn't get addressed. So that preventative part with those health risk assessments is a big part of it. You have a health and wellness coach. I mean, our providers, we, not only have our chiropractors who do nutritional training, but we also have a health and wellness coach that comes in and works with people. And his is, diet and exercise, so he can work with them in stretching and things like that, but also helping them, improve their diet. So it is about wellness. It is about preventative. It's about being proactive. So you try to get ahead of the game rather than being, reactive.
And can you talk a little bit more about the convenience of care? And also with that, go back to what you said about how your providers help navigate people through the system, because I know that many of our employees, don't really understand the system. They don't understand really when's the deductible in play, when's the co-insurance in play, who do I see, I've got this issue that needs to go beyond the clinic, what do I do? Talk about the role of the clinic in both being convenient as well as helping them through that.
So being that our clinic is an on-site clinic and, we're pretty closely associated with our HR department, there is a lot of education that goes on there. We pretty much know the plan as to where they can go. The providers, one thing, do not tell your providers everything about your plan, because then they just think they can give the farm away. So you have to kind of navigate that a little bit, but the employers, the physicians know, and the providers, whether it be a chiropractor, whether it be the massage therapist or whatever, if they need something, they know to navigate through the system. We have physical therapy there 4 days a week. We have massage there at least once or twice a month. And that's their referral base. If it's musculoskeletal, when that phone call comes in, it's not to see the medical provider. Because actually, what is a medical provider going to do for somebody who has musculoskeletal? Ice, heat, anti-inflammatories, rest. Period. Or pain pills, correct. I wasn't going to go there. But otherwise, you can see a chiropractor. Our chiropractors, they can do stretching, they can do, that deep heat ultrasound, they can do laser treatment. We have physical therapy there. Send them to physical therapy. That's going to cost them a lot less, and they're going to get back to work probably and feel better a lot faster than by going home, putting ice, heat, and taking some anti-inflammatory or masking it with pain meds. So they navigate that way, and it's all in processes, and this phone call comes in, those girls up front have to, okay, musculoskeletal, here first. Then if they can't do it, work with the PT. PT comes to the provider and says, I may need an x-ray or I may need further, screening. Good, we'll send you here. And they come back, those results come back to us, and it's keeping, like I said, out of that system. So they refer where they need to refer, but we have all that on site, for them to actually utilize.
And I think that's key. We know that the health systems want to keep all of their patients within their system, and we know that can be quite expensive. I had a situation where my son needed emergency care, and so went in to get emergency care, and then they said, well, we need to have an MRI, and we'll get you right down the hall to get an MRI. And I said, whoa, let's, does he need the MRI today, or is it something out? And I had discussions with this particular provider in the past, and he knew what Breakbush was about, and he said, oh yeah, that's right. You guys do, at the time it was Smart Choice MRI. And so had to work with him to say that we're going to go outside of the system and make sure that we get care that's going to be a lot more affordable MRI than in a hospital session, like you said, it's going to be $4,000.
Yeah, and it is. You have to somehow get your employees educated that you have those services available. Whether it's TVs in a break room, whether it's flyers and posters, whether it's going to the employee monthly staff meetings, things like that for production meetings. Those things are what educate people, and it's only tidbits. You can't give them big amounts of information, but you can say, if you say that word free, I'll tell you they're going to perk up and they're going to listen, because they're going to want something to keep money in their pocket as well.
And you hit on something key there, that you have to give tidbits. Mike, can you elaborate on that? How do you get the word out and make sure that you stay in front of the employees with the message?
Yeah, we try to have like a Wellness Wednesday message that's got a different topic to perk their interest. Obviously, a lot of, with the new clinic operator there, even rounding, out on the floor to just have a presence. A lot of posters, a lot of cajoling, and like I said, did I tell you it was free? And again, the clinic providers also, they know what the tier 1 list is. You know, they have it there. And we're very lucky because I challenged them. I says, well, you know, I'm not going to go hire an outside care navigator. You guys are the navigator. They're coming to you. So we've had some early success already for people that need MSK, and instead of keeping it in town at the major system, you know, these people are heading over to Appleton. And again, the pre-op and all that's done in our clinic, and the post-op is as well. So, yeah, kind of, you know, challenge your DPC or whoever that, here's the list of people that you should be referring to that are, in our case, a tier 1, you know, because it's good for the employee. They're going to look like heroes. That's what I told them. You're going to look like a hero when you recommend this provider because it's going to be free to that employee.
Agreed, and it's a matter of keeping them inside of that tiered system. Whether you have the luxury of having an on-site clinic or not, once you have a tiered system where you're trying to drive change, it's all about getting to them early. If they start to notice, you know, discomfort, if we're going to focus on musculoskeletal, to make sure that they know the options. To make sure that they're going to start with the right provider to get appropriate advice. And okay, now they're going to need an MRI. Make sure that they already know, hey, here's the provider for that particular imaging. And now the surgery is going to come. Okay, we're still within that tier 1 system. We've got a path for you the entire way. But it's important whether you've got an on-site clinic or not to recognize that the earlier in that you get them into your system, into your tier 1 system, the better off it's going to be. And to make sure that you identify those resources as much as possible ahead of time.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that our plan is actually designed so that if you need to go to urgent care or an emergency room even, it may not be covered as an emergency visit. So we are on call, well, I'm on call, 24/7. So there's times I get calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, hey, I need, you know, this is going on, what should I do? If it's an infant or something like that, by all means, go. But if it's an adult who has a little bit of a sore throat or something like that, we've educated them to the point where now they'll call and they'll get scheduled. And I can schedule them right from there. I'll say, you know, come on in at 9 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever, you know, to be seen rather than going to the ER, and I'll come right out and say, you may have to pay that whole bill, you know. So it is that education, and it's very important to educate, and it's very important to be accessible. Like he was saying, like Mike was saying, that navigation, that your providers and your clinic is your care navigation. Do we want assistance with that? We would love assistance with that. And we're hoping that someday we're going to get a good care navigation program somewhere. But in the meantime, we are that, and the employees actually look at us as that for them now. So they'll call, I need, I just went to my doctor, I need an MRI. Instead of, going through the hospital, bring the order to the clinic, and we can navigate them. Whether you're in Ohio, Indiana, or Georgia, we have those navigation, plans in place for our people.
Yep. So I think we're at the time where we want to take some questions from the audience. So if you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to step up to the mic. I believe we've got people running around with mics. We've got one over there and over here. Or text to the number on the screen right there, 608-571-3690, if you've got any questions.
Dan. Hi, it's Cheryl. I'm going to ask a question, and I don't know that there's a good answer to this, just so you know.
That trick question.
So I'm listening to this conversation and so impressed at the work that each of you are doing to encourage the use of providers that do a good job and cost less. I will tell you that the delivery systems don't see that. In many cases, they don't see the work that you're doing. They don't see the loss of business yet. And we're thinking about how can we create a picture for them about the care that they're missing out on by continuing to be so high priced. Do you have thoughts about ways that we could quantify the redirection of care from your clinics and combine that as a cooperative to create a more comprehensive picture of how market share is moving to higher value providers?
Well,
Go ahead.
so I can kind of give you an example. So we just recently started kind of becoming a near-site clinic for some employers. And so we opened it up to, again, occupational health type things. So we do DOT physicals, we do their random drug screens and their pre-employment drug screens. When those people come in, they're like, can I come here? Can I utilize this? And that is actually something that I've been trying to work on for a few years, is how to get other employers involved and how to bring them into the clinics. Because if their people are already excited and they do utilize it, they come in and they pay a fee for service. You know, they can see one of our docs or they can get a blood test and they pay our cost plus a percentage. They're coming in. So if we can find a way to, start really promoting this, and yeah, our clinics would probably have to grow, but I think that's one avenue, is you just kind of trickle them in somehow and then help your clinics, your on-site clinics grow, and then you become kind of like a coalition for, a few employers.
From my perspective, data is the biggest thing. If we can start showing them data on, hey, this is what we were spending within your system, and this is what we're spending now within your system because we've moved X amount outside of it for that reason, it's going to get their attention. But it's also dependent on your location and what you have available. For us in Westfield, there's not as much healthcare available. So when we started down this path of steerage into other places that, our employees had to drive a little bit for, it got the attention of the local system. And they reached out to us and say, hey, how come we didn't get a shot at this? Can we be part of this? And my response to them is you're not excluded. If you've got a product that you think you can do better than your competitors, more cost-effective than your competitors, essentially bring a value to it, we can have a conversation. So that led into a series of conversations with that particular system to try to come up with something that they could offer us. Now, the unfortunate thing in that end is that it was so much outside of their normal process of fee-for-service that we couldn't cross over and come up with a partnership with it. But it certainly got their attention that we were doing it, and we planted the seed, and the hope is that someday they'll get to a point where they will understand that healthcare is moving into a different direction, and we're going to focus more on the value associated with that.
Yeah, and I've challenged our new on-site clinic provider that I want to see reporting on, what are you doing? And so it's got like the major diagnostic groupings and all that. So couple that with the data I get normally, you can kind of extrapolate and say, yeah, this is the amount of what the street value, if you price it even at, bump it up against Medicare and then triple it and run from there. So, yeah.
Great. We're getting a lot of great questions from the audience, and we will get to as many as we can. Also, feel free to step up to the mic. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. Do you provide access to your on-site clinics to all employees or just those enrolled in your health plan? And then what about family members? Are they allowed to be seen at your clinics as well?
I'll start. It's to the people who are on the health plan, and then we also open it up to the families as well.
Ours is, we open it up to all associates, whether they are on the plan or not. And we also open it up to all family members, whether they're on the plan or not. The difference being is that if you're not on the plan, you come in for a low cost. You know, you can't always give the farm away, so you just charge them a little bit. So you charge them to come and see the doc, or you charge them our costs for the blood work and things like that, just to maintain those costs. But anybody, all their family members, we try not to see anybody under the age of 2. Being that we're in an on-site clinic like that, we, if we have a pediatrician, yeah, then by all means, we'd probably see him. But, those little babies, they need different care than what we actually can, provide for them, so.
For us, it's a facility dependent, and I'll explain why. In Wisconsin, where we've got a building outside of the plant, it's open to all employees, regardless of health care coverage, and then open to spouses and dependents that are on the plan. For our clinics in Irving, Texas, and Mocksville, North Carolina, those clinics are actually smaller units within the facility. One, we converted a first aid room into a clinic, and you'd be surprised what you can get in there and really make it feel like a clinic. But because we can't have, obviously non-employees or children running through a production environment, that is only open to employees regardless of coverage. So it's dependent on can we give access to the non-employees is what it matters to us.
Great.
I have a question.
TPAs are very helpful to the overall medical program. Do you have any recommendations on effective TPAs, and if so, why?
Mike?
Well, sometimes the biggest aren't the best. If you want to do a customized program, sometimes you lose some of that flexibility. And quite frankly, I parted ways. I had a great time firing people this year. So TPA, on-site clinic provider, but yeah, sometimes the smaller ones actually do a better job, I think. I think I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be dependent on, your market. Are you within Wisconsin, or are you also outside of Wisconsin? Could be very dependent on what you're going to have for a TPA. So I think rather than name certain TPAs, those are conversations that you can reach out to any one of us or any other people from the Alliance to talk about. Hey, given what you have, then we could talk about our experiences. And of course, the Alliance staff themselves can tell you a little bit more about, hey, here's the handful of ones that, given your scenario, I'd focus on that, because what's going to work for one employer for a TPA is not necessarily going to work for another employer. So I would encourage you to start with the Alliance, both the staff as well as the members, to talk about their experience. Mm-hmm. Sorry, we didn't really give a specific, hey, go to X, Y, Z.
I've got a person here. All right, sir, go ahead.
Thank you so much, the Alliance, and for all of you for being here. This is a wonderful event. Thank you so much. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I work very closely with Merrill Steele. We have an on-site clinic. We have a clinic about a mile away. Some people prefer one over the other. But increasingly, as I've been involved with industry this way, I found that so few politicians have any understanding or real appreciation for how much the exorbitant costs are making manufacturing much less competitive. There's just a lot of wasted cost here, and I think it comes down to healthcare transparency, and we in Marty McCary's book, The Price We Pay, he talks about how if you're dead and you go to a mortician, or your family goes to a mortician, by law they're required to tell you how much the funeral's going to cost. But if you're alive and you go to a hospital, they're not required to tell you that. And so you have consumer protections when you're dead, but not when you're alive in terms of health care. And what I'm getting at is how important in your minds is it that we engage our politicians to create policies where the free market medical system can better thrive as an alternative, to be of value both to the employees as well as to the employers.
From my perspective, I think it's very important that we get in front of the politicians, because the hospital has they're getting in front of our politicians, and they're getting their voice heard. They've got quite a bit of a budget, and the Alliance is doing work in that space as well to try and make sure that the employer's voice is heard, not just the hospital systems. But I believe it to be very valuable that they understand every point of view in regards to that particular topic.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes, another question here. Yes, ma'am. Thanks for being here.
So I just wanted to add on to that and let all of you know that there's a group that has formed employers from across the state called Advancing Free Market Healthcare, that is dedicated to making sure that the voice of employers is heard at the state capitol, so that our lawmakers and regulators understand the impact that high healthcare prices are having on your businesses. And this will be a big tent group. There's lots of opportunities to be involved in regional meetings with lawmakers, signing on to letters, et cetera. So if this is something that is of interest to you, let someone from the Alliance know, and we can forward that information to Advancing Free Market Healthcare. We're helping to facilitate this group, but this is an organic employer-led group.
I'm going to jump in with a couple more questions, and I'm going to combine a couple again. So what evaluation did you walk through when making the decision to open your DPC? Who was engaged, and what was the potential savings? There's also a question, again, about opening and any concerns about maybe litigation or seeing your insurance go up.
Want to start, Mike?
I don't know if I can remember the whole question. At least addressing the backside, I mean, obviously we've told our employees that, these our on-site clinic provider is an independent company. We don't see anything other than aggregated data. Obviously they carry the insurance. Really haven't had a problem with that, as long as you kind of got that firewall up there. And as far as, who got involved, it was both finance and HR. And again, we're currently doing primary care and therapy and wellness. So that was kind of, who could provide all of it. There's some great people in central Wisconsin that provide great care. So we were lucky, unlike when we kind of did when I talked about the NEHA deal back in 2013, we actually had some great alternatives. So, there again, some of the DPCs will work with companies, and you go to their clinics. Again, not everybody can afford to have an on-site clinic. So, certainly investigate. There's a whole world out there that, you can get that primary care either on-site or at one of the partners that are out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with us and starting our clinics both at the Seats location and Flambeau, it was HR and finance, and then just putting a small budget together and then just growing from there. And actually, it is finding the good providers and contracting with them that are willing to come in and not kind of take your pocketbook away from you too. So. I mean, we've also increased our services to include mental health now. So, I mean, I think we have about a one-stop shop at our on-site clinic now, from anything from seeing a primary care physician to mental health, radiology, physical therapy, wellness coaches, So I think I think I've covered all the bases anyway now.
Anything short of a surgery, you can do it, huh?
Yeah, well, we do a few of them too.
Yeah, that's true.
Depending on what they are.
Get those stitches in.
Yeah.
For us, we started out, like I said, a lot on the occupational side with on-site physical therapy. So it helped us realize that, hey, on-site services really do have an impact for our employees. And so that helped us, kind of say, okay, let's take the next step. And one of the major components of the next step is start to run the numbers and saying, okay, if we bring in direct primary care, what is the return? Will it pay for itself? Will it pay for this, fancy new building that we want to put up? And then when we looked at the numbers, then it reinforced that idea that, okay, not only will we do something good for our employees, but it's also going to save us money. So it really helped in that regard.
I think we have time for just one more question, maybe.
Have the person back here, if that's all right. Go ahead, sir.
When taking a look at your on-site clinics, what is usually the utilization for those employees that are eligible in participating in those clinics? It's not usually going to be 100% each year, but what was that needed to be in order to get an ROI that you're talking about?
Well, my theory was we didn't know, and we were hoping that if we built it, they would come, and as long as you build it in a way that they will come and provide what they are wanting or needing, they do come. And I think we're up. At some point, everybody that is an associate of Flambeau has been in our clinic. So, and the ones that keep coming, I would say it's probably close to 60% of our associates. A lot more family members than associates, but the health plan, it is being seen by a lot of people.
Yeah, again, being new, but we have 1,187, I think, that are in that facility between the dependents and the spouses. And after 1 month, they saw 230 of them. So I'm very anxious to see February and March numbers, because they figure that they'll be able to get to a third of the employees very easily with the goal of half by the end of the year of all those eligible people.
For us, it wasn't necessarily that we had to hit a specific percentage of employees, because it's some of it's going to be dependent on the individuals that are going to be seen. If you're, a 25-year-old very healthy person and you're just going in once a year for your annual physical, that's a different story than somebody who's got diabetes or some other chronic condition that then they're being seen 4 times a year or more to truly manage that condition and keep those costs down. So it's not necessarily, you got to hit this mark of 50 or 60 or whatever it is. It's trying to get to those ones that you can make a difference on from our perspective. So we never set out and said, hey, we have to hit X percentage of it. But regardless, our ROI is still strong. We're seeing between 50 and 60% utilization for all of our employees.
Yeah.
And don't forget about the employee aspect.
Right.
Convenience, you're taking care of your employees, which is so important nowadays.
Yep, it's a one-stop shop. I mean, you have the providers, you have your medications, you have your blood work, everything. That's what they are, and they find it very accessible.
Yes, thank you. I agree with that. It is about the employees. Yes, there's a return on it, but it's really about your human capital out there and investing in them, which makes it very important. So Mike and Tracy, thank you very much for opening our program this morning and sharing such great insights and giving some people some actionable steps. So please, round of applause for Tracy and Mike. Yay, Tracy.